The goal here is to braze these 1/16 inch steel rods onto this piece of 16-ounce copper without burning a hole in the copper. Brazing a daub of bronze on the end of each piece of this 1/16 inch rod. Brazing the 1/16 inch rod onto the 16-ounce copper. You'll notice the torch is at a right angle towards the work to be brazed. If a rod is too short to hold with my fingers, then I'll use a pair of needle nose. Again, the torch tip is at a right angle to the 1/16 inch rod. By holding the torch tip at a right angle to the 1/16 inch rod, the primary heat is going on that daub of bronze. There is enough residual heat so that the 16-ounce copper gets hot enough to accept the brazing. Here are two other rods. Now this one is bent at an L shape. I'll braze it on the same way. Got myself in a position here where it's a little hard to get the right angle. Get that 90-degree angle with the torch tip. Playing the flame back and forth across it until the daub on the bronze melts onto the copper. Turning the piece over, you can see that there is no burn through. Notice that this piece of copper is not flat against the table. This makes a difference when brazing onto any piece of sheet metal. Using the same materials, the 16-ounce copper and the 1/16 inch rod, and there's where the similarity ends, because this is a completely different situation for brazing. Using this 3/8 inch square piece of steel to keep the 1/16 inch rod tight against the copper so that the air from the torch does not move the 1/16 inch rod out of position. When the copper is flat against the table, as it is here, it takes more heat to get it up to a heat that will accept the bronze, compared to the first piece, which was not flat on the table. Copper has a lower melting temperature than steel, but this 1/16 inch steel rod is so much thinner than the mass of copper that it is quite easy to burn up this 1/16 inch rod before getting the 16-ounce copper hot enough to accept the bronze. What I'm trying to do right here is keep moving the torch around until I get both pieces up to temperature, so that I'm not burning up either the copper or the steel rod. And here you can see the steel rod is starting to get red hot. So I keep pulling my torch away until I get the copper so it's red hot. Now I'm just putting my bronze in, pulling the torch away, so I just don't burn up that 1/16 inch rod or put a hole in the copper. Oops, I burnt just a little bit of that copper at the edge, which is always something that one needs to take in consideration, because the edge of the copper is much more vulnerable than the interior part. Putting the bronze on this other side, this is quite easy. Because of the brazing on the other side of the 16th inch rod, and that's created more mass. So it's less likely that we'll burn the 1/16 inch rod up. And this is the finished braze once it has been wire brushed. These two brazing examples illustrate that each brazing situation has to be approached individually. Experience helps, but it's still a trial and error process.